Right. The next card, we were thinking about putting this too, but since it might see a lot of abuse, we're putting this on the limited list. Royal Oppression. The card has been freshly on the ban list for the first time in 4 formats. That's being hit. Now, Royal Oppression, the only reason was they banned it was for money profit. They only banned it so they can make money off Exceed. Because if Royal Oppression ran around, you can oppress Tour Guide, you can oppress any Exceed you want, and no one will give a crap about Exceed. The only reason they banned it was to push Exceed. Bringing it back would bring consistency back into the game, which will allow lower decks like Tier 2 decks, such as Blackwings, Zombies, Light Thorns even, to use Royal Oppression to stop these ridiculous plays that decks out there use. And Royal Oppression is as one of those cards that every deck will run. So it's a very good card. It's a very consistent card. It's not a broken card if you think about it, because you and your opponent could use it. So if you're playing, like, let's say you're playing Light Swords and you chain with Oppression, when you drop a JD, your opponent can negate that JD. So it's a win-win situation for both you and your opponent. So it's not a really busted card if you think about it. And it will give outs to you to answer to Quasar, because Quasar is running around. It'll give you answers to plants. It'll give you answers to a lot of things. So bringing Royal Oppression back would bring the consistency and skill back into the game that we desperately need. So your thoughts?
I think the format that we're in has become much too orientated toward one type of deck. Konami's been pushing Exceeds more and more, and I understand that because that's the archetype they want to push. And they did the same thing with Synchros, and now they're doing the same thing with Exceeds. And I understand that. I'm not trying to stop them from doing that. If you want to run Exceeds and spam them all day, I think that's fine. However, the alternative should be that your opponent has something to do about it. A lot of people say Solemn Warning. Well, Solemn Warning stops one summon and costs 2,000 life points.
Solemn Warning is not that consistent anymore.
Go ahead.
Solemn Warning is not that consistent anymore, because when you pay 2,000 to stop one card, next turn they'll just kill you, and there's 2,000 life points that you paid will come and eat your face. That's all it is. So Solemn Warning is not.
They don't even have to kill you now, because most of the time against a plant deck, you're going to be Solemn Warning their Synchro summons. But if you Solemn Warning the Synchro summon, they're just going to get their Tengu back and then get their Bull back and just do another Synchro summon. So even playing Solemn Warning, they don't even have to end their turn. They can keep going on you, and there's nothing you can really do about it right now. Royal Oppression would add more balance to the format and give both anti-meta and non-tier meta decks a chance to fight against the whole Synchro spam from plants and Monster Mash and stuff, and the whole Exceed spam from Exceed decks. So it would just add a lot more consistency overall.
It would. Want to run down a semi-limited list?
Let's not forget one of the most important cards that does need to be limited, which we almost forgot. Inzektor Hornet.
Limited?
Yes.
Alright, want to run down your thoughts why it should be limited?
Inzektor Hornet is the entire reason the Inzektor deck is, at the moment, currently broken. It is the one card, I should say, that makes that deck more than ridiculous. Now, banning it is unfair to the deck, obviously, but it needs to be stopped somehow, because right now, all they do is Hornet, 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 your entire field is gone. And if they did this, they might actually be able to leave the Dragonfly alone. They might not have to touch Dragonfly or Centipede or anything for that matter. Because the Hornet, from what we've seen, is the main abuse card of the deck. Like, the whole deck is centered around that card. If they get it, they can abuse it all day long, and there's nothing you can really do about it. Because of the rulings that they had. Like, you'd have to have a Banisher or a Macros to stop it. So I think it needs to go to 1. What will this do, you ask? Well, it'll give people a lot more time to try and play. It will make people playing Inzektors actually think about building their decks. They won't just go splash Hornet, splash this, splash this, splash this. Okay, let's play. They will actually have to go, well, I can't make my entire deck around one card because I don't know how to draw it. So I have to add some consistency using this card and this card and this card. And so they'll have to come with a more consistent deck, just not a straight out abuse of Hornet. Another problem that I think Hornet needs to go to one about is you don't even have to summon him. Like, Hornet never even has to hit the field. So Warning doesn't do anything against him. Bomber doesn't do anything against him. Change Disappearance doesn't do anything against him because he doesn't have to hit the field. Like, he literally just is equipped straight from your hand and starts nuking your opponent's entire field. So, in my opinion, he's way too unbalanced, and it needs to be dropped to 1 to add consistency and balance for the Inzector decks right now.
I guess you have a good point there. With the 3 Hornets and like, there's so many cards like Foolish, Armageddonite that dump them in the grave easily. I guess limiting them would give consistency because instead of the 2 extra Hornets, you have to run an Armageddonite to dump them in the grave. And once Macro is played, Inzectors go boom, they're dead because they have no more Hornet to destroy, and you could get over their Dragonfly pretty easily. So I guess limiting the Hornets would sort of give the other player out. Like they could have responses to the Hornets, which would sort of stop the deck. I guess you could say. So those are my thoughts.
Yes, it will stop it, but I believe they still have a bunch of outs. If the player is smart, he will be using stuff like MST, possibly Dust Tornado, stuff like that. We've seen a lot of that in the meta right now. And if cards like Macros Cosmos are such a problem for him, I really do believe that he should be using something to stop those, like MST or Dust Tornado. So I mean, while it would kind of hurt the deck, it would force them to build a deck that they would have to think about playing, not just a deck that is kind of like, I guess you say, autopilot and completely unfair versus every other deck. It needs to be dropped to 1 for balance.
Okay, one more card on the limit list that we should put on here. Off the ban list, Metamorphosis. If you don't know what this card does, it's send one monster from your side of the field to the graveyard to special summon 1 fusion monster with the same level. My question is, Instant Fusion is way too much of a better card in this. Like, there's so much better cards than Metamorphosis in the meta right now. So bringing this back would not be that bad, because if you think about it, what is the reasons, when will you use a Metamorphosis? Like, in what situation? To exceed, you would use the monster, you wouldn't minus yourself. Like, I guess the best out for Metamorphosis is a beat stick. That's, you just get you tribute a 19 to get a 22, for example. That is the best way Metamorphosis could be used in this format. Well, with all this crazy crap running around. So there's no really reason why it should stay banned. It should just come off the list. It's not a really that great of a card. There's much better cards, like I said, like Instant Fusion. That is just a stupid card. Like, there are much better cards out there. So Metamorphosis being limited, it should happen. I don't see why not. Well, let's just keep it at limited to see what it does. Then we would, if possibly, semi it, then or unlimited. So, your thoughts, DaGadgetGuru?
I think the whole reason Metamorphosis got banned in the first place is because back then Instant Fusion was okay, but whatever monster you grabbed couldn't attack. It died during the end phase. It was very limited what you could do with Instant Fusion. As for Metamorphosis, once you grab the monster, you can do whatever you want with it. So back then it was a little more, I used to say ridiculous than needed, but now that a lot of that has been weeded out and there's a lot more control in the format with Veilers and such cards like that, I think it would be perfectly fine to bring back Metamorphosis. I don't see any giant impact it would have on the meta, and it would give players an interesting out sometimes using certain fusion cards that have no longer been used for a long time. So I'd like to see it come back. It would add a lot more interesting options to the meta.
Yeah, you're right about the back in the day format, because back in the day, that's all it was, B-sticks. B-stick, B-stick, B-stick. So,